I, Emily Carter, dragged my suitcase through the front gate, still basking in the afterglow of my cousin's wedding in the Dominican Republic. The late afternoon sun bathed the quiet street in a golden haze, the familiar row of houses looking just as peaceful as when I had left. But as my eyes landed on my own front yard, the warmth inside me froze into a cold, heavy lump. The oak tree was gone. Not trimmed. Not damaged. Gone, completely vanished, as if it had been ripped out of the earth by some unseen hand. All that remained was a wide, raw patch of torn-up soil, deep gouges from heavy machinery crisscrossing the once lush lawn. My breath caught in my throat as I stumbled forward, disbelief battling with growing horror. I looked to my neighbor's house, Karen Monroe's house, and my heart sank even further. Her roof had partially collapsed, the front yard cordoned off with bright yellow caution tape that flapped weakly in the breeze. Sheets of plastic covered broken windows, and debris was scattered like the aftermath of a storm. From the looks of it, something had gone very, very wrong. I didn't need anyone to tell me who was behind it. Karen had made her feelings about the oak perfectly clear over the past year. The complaints about the falling leaves, the blocked sunlight, the so-called threat the tree posed to her property and children. And now, standing here amid the wreckage, it was obvious. In my absence, Karen had taken matters into her own hands. My hands clenched into fists. That tree wasn't just a tree. It was a living memory, planted by my grandfather when he was just a boy, a silent witness to generations of my family's laughter, struggles, and celebrations. And now it was gone, without my consent, without my knowledge. A sacred piece of my history, destroyed by the selfishness of a neighbor who couldn't be bothered to coexist with anything that didn't fit her narrow idea of convenience. As the realization sank in, so did the anger. This wasn't going to end with an apology or a check for damages. This was going to be a battle, one that would drag both of us through courtrooms and insurance offices, into a bitter war of accusations and legal fees. Karen's impulsive act of sabotage had set off a chain of consequences she couldn't begin to fathom. And the cost wouldn't just be mine to bear. Already, whispers were spreading through the neighborhood, cautious, curious, judgmental. People peeked from behind curtains and paused on their porches, watching me take in the devastation. The once quiet street now buzzed with speculation, the uneasy knowledge that something ugly had happened here, and it wasn't over yet. I tightened my grip on the suitcase handle, my jaw set. Karen Monroe had made a mistake, a reckless, irreversible mistake, and soon enough she would learn just how high the price of foolishness could be. The house on Maplewood Lane wasn't just a house to me. It was my anchor, my inheritance, my link to the people who had shaped my life long before I was born. My grandparents had built it with their own hands, brick by brick, board by board, pouring every ounce of their love and hope into it. In the front yard, commanding and proud, stood the ancient oak tree, planted by my grandfather when he was just a boy, nurtured by decades of storms, seasons, and stories. Sprawling branches offered a canopy of shade in the summer and a fiery display of color in the fall. It was more than a tree. It was a living testament to endurance, to memory, to family. When I first moved back after inheriting the house, the oak welcomed me like an old friend. Every creak of its limbs in the wind, every rustle of its leaves, whispered of a past that still lived here. It was a comfort beyond words. And then Karen Monroe moved in next door. First, I was hopeful. A new neighbor could mean fresh starts, shared cups of coffee, maybe even backyard barbecues. I baked cookies, a cliché perhaps, but a genuine gesture. I knocked on her door with a plate in hand, wearing my best welcoming smile. Karen opened the door with the guarded look of someone who'd already decided not to be impressed. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a mouth set in a perpetual grimace. Her two young kids peered out from behind her legs. She accepted the cookies with a tight nod but said nothing about them. Instead, her gaze slid over my shoulder, landing on the oak tree towering over my front yard, and immediately her nose wrinkled in distaste. "That tree's a mess," she said without preamble. "It's gonna dump all over my yard, isn't it?" I blinked, caught off guard. Well, in the fall there are some leaves, sure. But it's a beautiful old tree. It's been here longer than any of us. Karen shrugged, unimpressed. Doesn't matter how old it is if it's a nuisance. That was our very first conversation. Set the tone for everything that came after. The months rolled by and the hostility quietly grew. Karen waged a petty, passive-aggressive war against the oak and, by extension, against me. Every few days in the autumn, I'd find heaps of raked leaves dumped back onto my lawn, clear evidence of her disdain. Sometimes she'd even stuff handfuls into plastic bags and leave them on my doorstep like some bizarre offering. Till I tried to be understanding. Maybe she was overwhelmed. She was a single mother, after all, juggling 2 young kids and a stressful life. Maybe the tree was just a scapegoat for deeper frustrations. I invited her to community yoga classes, suggested local crafting workshops where she might meet other parents. I even offered to help her start a compost bin. The fallen leaves made excellent mulch for my thriving lawn. Offer was met with thinly veiled contempt. "I don't have time for that nonsense," Karen snapped once, balancing a crying toddler on her hip. "I've got real problems, not time to play in the dirt like you." The sting of her words lingered long after the encounter ended. I reminded myself to stay patient, to take the high road, to remember that not everyone found peace under the same canopy of leaves. But the seeds of resentment had been planted, and they were taking root fast. The real turning point came one cold Saturday morning in late November. Karen showed up at my door uninvited, waving a business card in my face like a battle flag. It was from a local tree removal company. The words "free estimates" and "fast service" were emblazoned in bold, aggressive letters. "You should call them," she said flatly. "That tree is a danger. It's shading my house too much. It's dropping junk all over my roof. It's a health hazard for my kids. I can barely afford heating bills because of the damn shade." I stared at her, dumbfounded. "Karen, the tree is healthy. I've had it inspected. It's not dead or diseased. And it's entirely on my property." Her lips tightened. "It's making my life miserable. You should be a good neighbor and get rid of it." I felt something shift inside me then, a firm, immovable line being drawn. "I'm sorry you're unhappy," I said carefully. "But the tree isn't going anywhere. It means a lot to me. It's part of my family's history. And it's legally on my land." Karen's face flushed with anger. "Fine," she spat. "But don't expect me to just sit here and let that thing ruin everything." She turned on her heel and stomped back across the lawn, her boots crunching through the fallen leaves like a war drum. I closed the door and leaned against it, heart pounding. It wasn't just about a tree anymore. It was about territory. It was about resentment and frustration and pride. I could feel it, a storm gathering, silent for now but full of destructive promise. Some part of me knew even then that this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The weekend I left for my cousin's wedding was supposed to be a joyful escape, a chance to reconnect with family and step away from the small, simmering tensions at home. I packed my bags, locked the front door, and waved goodbye to the old oak tree with a fond smile, unaware that it would be the last time I would ever see it standing. The wedding was beautiful, full of laughter, love, and the kind of chaotic joy that only big family gatherings can bring. I barely thought of Maplewood Lane during those days, assuming everything would be just as I left it. But when I pulled into my driveway late Sunday evening, headlights sweeping over the familiar landscape, my heart dropped into my stomach. Something was horribly, horribly wrong. The tree was gone. In its place was a raw, gaping wound in the earth. Deep tire tracks marred the front lawn, gouging through the grass and soil. The flower beds my grandmother had once tended were trampled into oblivion, churned into mud. Splinters of wood and broken branches littered the ground like the aftermath of a battle. I stumbled out of the car, disbelieving, my feet sinking into the torn-up earth. The air smelled of sawdust and diesel fuel. It wasn't just that the tree was missing. It was the violence of its absence that shook me. Then I saw Karen's house, and the extent of the disaster came into focus. Part of her roof had caved in, a gaping hole exposing wooden beams and insulation. Yellow police tape fluttered weakly across the front porch, a hasty warning that the structure was unsafe. Her front yard looked almost as bad as mine, debris scattered everywhere. For a long moment, I just stood there, stunned into silence. I didn't need anyone to explain what had happened. I knew. Deep down, I knew. Karen had done it. Later, the full story would come out in bits and pieces. Witnesses told me about the truck that pulled up while I was away, about the crew that worked quickly, almost furtively, bringing the mighty oak down piece by piece. No permits, no city authorization. Karen, in her boundless arrogance, had hired them herself. She thought she could solve her problems by erasing the tree from existence, as if it were that simple. But the oak fought back, even in its death. When the workers cut the wrong way, a massive branch crashed through Karen's roof, causing tens of thousands of dollars in damage. It was almost poetic in a grim, heartbreaking way. She destroyed a monument of history and, in doing so, destroyed part of her own home. Karen's reaction wasn't what you might expect. She didn't come over to apologize, to explain, to offer restitution. No, she sued me. Within days, I was served papers accusing me of negligence, of harboring a dangerous tree that had caused her property damage. She demanded compensation for repairs, emotional distress, and a list of grievances so long it would have been laughable if it weren't so infuriating. She painted herself as the victim, the poor single mother burdened by the recklessness of her neighbor. It would have been easy to feel overwhelmed, to cave to the pressure, but something in me hardened. I had lost something irreplaceable. I wasn't about to lose my dignity, too. I hired a lawyer, a sharp woman named Julia Ramirez who specialized in property disputes. Together, we gathered evidence: photographs of the intact tree taken weeks before, arborist reports certifying its health, testimony from neighbors who had seen the unauthorized crew at work. We filed a counterclaim against Karen for trespassing, property destruction, and emotional distress of our own. The legal battle that followed was grueling, stretching over months, filled with depositions, motions, and endless paperwork. Karen fought viciously, accusing me of everything from indifference to malicious intent. Her lawyer tried to paint the oak as a ticking time bomb, a menace I had selfishly refused to address. But the facts didn't support her story. Under cross-examination, the tree service she had hired admitted they were brought in secretly, without permits, under Karen's direct orders. Their sloppy work had caused the roof collapse, not the tree itself. When the verdict finally came down, it felt like breathing again after months underwater. Karen's lawsuit was dismissed with prejudice. My counterclaim succeeded. Court awarded me $80,000 in damages, enough to replace the destroyed landscaping, address the emotional distress, and perhaps most importantly, honor the loss of the oak itself. Karen, facing a judgment she couldn't pay, was forced to mortgage her house. The strain proved too much. Within 6 months, a for sale sign appeared on her front lawn. She moved out quietly in the dead of night, taking her bitterness with her. I watched from my window as the moving trucks rumbled away, feeling a complicated mix of vindication and sadness. This hadn't been the victory I wanted. Nothing could bring back the oak. Nothing could undo the violence that had been done. But there was a strange peace in knowing that justice, imperfect as it was, had prevailed. That spring, I planted a new tree in the front yard, a red maple, chosen carefully for its resilience and beauty. It would never replace the old oak, but it would grow strong in its own time, weaving new memories into the fabric of the place my family had called home for generations. As the seasons changed, the scars on the land slowly healed. Grass grew back over the tire tracks. Flowers bloomed again where chaos had reigned. The neighborhood, once tense with whispered accusations and strained glances, began to relax. Children rode their bikes down the street without fear. Neighbors stopped to chat in the evenings, lingering over gardens and porch lights. Life moved on as it always does, but I never forgot the lesson the oak taught me. About roots, about resilience, about standing firm even when the storm rages. Some things are worth protecting, even at great cost. Some things are too precious to surrender. And sometimes, even when the world tries to tear them down, their spirit lingers, whispering through the leaves of a brand new tree.